It's no doubt one of the favorite distinctive characteristics of the rom-com, the romantic comedy movie genre, the montage. You know that part of the movie, it's where a lot of time passes at a really quick pace. I've mentioned it before, an obvious favorite of mine is Footloose, where Ren, played by Kevin Bacon, teaches Willard, played by Christopher Penn, to dance to Let's Hear It for the Boy, one of the best songs ever, movie montage. Or maybe a little less known, but a favorite of mine from the movie Notting Hill with Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. It's after a chance meeting with a famous actress. She's beyond famous. In his travel bookshop, Grant's life is changed. It's really just a short period of time where the two are together. He provides some anonymity and safety for her during a time of crisis in the actress's life. And then his life returns to normal. Being a rom-com means that, of course, he is not normal anymore. He can never be the same. And so the montage scene happens when Grant walks through the neighborhood, obviously thinking of her, as Bill Withers croons, "Ain't no sunshine when she's gone." As he walks, everyday life happens all around him. Nothing ever strange or startling, and the seasons change. A year goes by. This summer, we are doing something a little different. This summer, we want to invite our community to consider making what Bruce Reyes-Chow calls a faith montage. Here's what he has to say about a montage. He says, montages are a series of brief moments spliced together to create a whole. They're a bunch of short clips strung together to create an impression, a summary, a feeling. A good montage succinctly and effectively communicates place, personality, growth, breadth, and movement. The mid-film montage is a rom-com staple. Montages help the story progress without wasting precious production minutes. A faith montage is a series of brief statements about what we believe, what we live by. Now, if we were in the business world, maybe we would call that a mission statement, but let's not call it a mission statement. In the church world, as I was growing up, we called it a statement of faith. But you know, faith statements are really tricky. Maybe some of you are out there remembering the faith statement that you wrote in order to be confirmed in a church. Maybe you remember turning it into the session, going to a meeting, having that statement read, questioned, your faith examined for the rightness or orthodoxy of your faith. I don't remember doing that for confirmation. Mostly what I remember is the immaturity of my class, and I'm included in this. We did not really approach this task of confirmation with any amount of knowledge that it was important. In fact, what I remember about my confirmation class was one of the fellow students in the class hiding in the cabinets. I don't know that we were really mature enough to be making the decision to join a religious community as an adult. But that's where we were, and that's what we did. As I reflect back, I do remember, though, spending much of my teenage years thinking about what I don't believe, what I couldn't believe. A lot of it, for me, growing up in my context and community, had to do with who told me what to do and who told me what I couldn't do. The limits placed on me by a society that was still trying to figure out how women could contribute. What would my voice be outside of my home? If you know me well at all, you should know that this gave me great joy to challenge those norms. to raise my voice so that others would hear, to take on leadership roles in the most surprising of places, including fighting for religious equality in our public schools. I didn't really think about God. I didn't really think about what I believed about God. I don't think I could have expressed it in any meaningful way. I could tell you what I didn't believe about what I saw in the world. And I didn't really know how to explore that. So here's the montage part of the sermon. 7 years of higher education spent learning how to read, interpret, and apply scripture, studying history, memorizing famous theologians and their works. I remember my professor, F. Dale Bruner from Whitworth University, in my very first theology class, saying that there were 3 tests for what was true about God. First, what does Scripture say? Second, what does tradition say? And third, what do my experiences say? I've spent much of my life stuck in that framework, trying to sort out what I believe based on scriptures. And honestly, I want to tell you this morning that the more I study scripture, the less I know what scripture really says. The more I find objectionable at points, and the more I want to hear the other side of the story. Of course, I believe that there are vital truths revealed in Scripture. I also read a lot of texts of violence and terror and people being welcomed and people not being welcomed and cultures I don't understand. The best way I can describe it is through a meme that we have hanging in the office hallway and we've been waiting to use in a sermon for years. Sorry if you find this offensive. In 2,000 years, scholars will be trying to understand the difference between a butt dial and a booty call. Which is funny, but really, really humbling when we think that that's what we're trying to do with cultures from at least 2,000 years ago that originated in another part of the world. For me, in this montage of my faith story, there would be a turning point somewhere around the time my journey intersected with your faith journey. I was headed to something the Board of Pensions provides for pastors called Credo, as a way to reflect on this vocation that involves an expression of our personal and communal faith. Part of the preparation for that experience was to read comments provided by a few members of this community, and all of those comments were anonymous. One comment that I read before I went stuck out to me then and has stuck with me for all this time, that my preaching, teaching, and leading of this congregation lacked diversity. Whoever you were, thank you for writing that. All these years later, thank you for that gift. You see, I grew up believing in God and Jesus Christ. I have never doubted God's love for me. But I never realized that I had a choice in what that meant for me or for those around me. It's not very Presbyterian, being part of a tradition that believes God reveals God's self to us first. Our task then becomes to follow in the stories and traditions to learn what others have lived and believed. But I had only been listening to one voice. It was life-changing for me to realize that those stories and experiences were only one small part, one montage of the full story of God's people. I understand if this makes you a little uncomfortable this morning. I'm a pastor. I know what happens. I know that the world wants to know what the church believes, that there would be some relief in somebody saying, this is what you should believe about this. But our faith isn't like that. It's meant to be held in dialogue with each other, with Scripture, with tradition, and yes, with our experiences. And then we choose. We choose our faith. We choose what we believe. We choose how that changes the way we live our lives. What I want to share with you this morning is that this task, this journey, this faith experience of choosing faith is as old as faith itself. It's exactly what Joshua invites the gathered assembly to do in his last lecture. As Chris mentioned, the people of God have been freed from slavery. They've been provided for in the desert, and now they have been settled in a new land they would call home. In this new land, their faith is challenged, and it grows, and it changes, and they must continuously choose what they will believe. That's where Joshua makes this bold statement, telling the gathered crowd they must choose this day whom they will serve. He doesn't even give them a chance to respond before he declares, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Shortly after that, the entire gathering chooses the Lord, reestablishing their covenant with the great I Am in the same place as Abraham and Jacob. But Joshua makes them choose again and again, 3 times, establishing a stone pillar to remind them of their faith covenant. Choose this day whom you will serve. Brian J. Whitfield, professor at Mercer University, writes, "Yet we too are a people of choices, of commitments, and of covenants. We too must choose a focus that grounds our living. Too often we make that choice by default, without clear intention or reflection, but we make it nonetheless." Joshua's words make that choice explicit, raising it to a level of conscious deliberation. What choices and commitments will shape our identities, our communities, and our destinies? Friends, I believe we stand in a long line of people who have chosen their faith, who have chosen what they believe, who have chosen how that changes the way they live. I don't know if I seem a little nervous to you. My colleague is a little nervous as well as we start this summer, because we want to do something different. We want to share with you what it is we believe. Not from behind the pulpit, not telling you what you should believe, but sharing with you our faith montage, what we believe, and how that changes the way we live. Ordinarily, we stand behind the pulpit and share the very best of our studying of Scripture, how tradition has interpreted that Scripture over time, and how we think it might apply to our experience today. This summer, we want to share with you our faith montage. We're stepping out a little bit to share what we believe. We want to share what we believe about God, the Creator, the Spirit, Jesus, and the good news. What we hope is that in sharing our faith montages, we will enter into a sacred space of dialogue about what it is we choose to believe as individuals and what that means for us as a community. There's some congregational participation in this. So if you're online, we invite you to use the chat. And if you're sitting in a pew, or over here, it's in the windowsill, at the end of the pew, you will find yellow sticky notes and a pen. What we want to do this summer is build our faith montages, to build our faith montage as a community. And so every week there will be a question miraculously appearing. It can be one word. It need not be a paragraph. It could be a phrase or a sentence at most. This week we start our exploration by thinking about what it means to choose what we believe. And how does that choice change the way we live? This is mine. For me, choosing what I believe about God means choosing to listen for the voices and experiences and faith of all people everywhere. What does it mean to you? If you are interested in helping us form our faith montage, there is a bulletin board out in the Welcome Center, and every week you'll be invited to go out and to put your sticky note up on that bulletin board. There will be lots of other ways, as Thomas mentioned, in studies. There's still time to join a study. We're doing a community art project with our food pantry, and that is another excellent way that we'll be thinking about what it is we believe as a community. First, we begin with ourselves. How does what I choose to believe about God change the way I live?